very interesting, interesting stigma in different cultures. But anyways, so Ormus is just real, why I even mentioned that. That's part of this whole levitational conversation. When you start to get into nutrition, you start with the basics, right? So when we talk about levitational foods, we're talking about like chlorophyll-rich foods, right? Green, chlorophyll is the what gives green vegetables and plants its green pigment, right? You start to tap into that area of basic raw food. Then you get into like superfoods. That's the next tier, which is all a superfood really is by definition is a food that has more nutrition and more interesting qualities about it than your average lettuce or celery or cucumber or watermelon, seeded watermelon, of course, and things like that. It has a lot more tricks on it, and it's also been more historically revered, more historically used. For example, we were talking about aloe vera before, right? Aloe vera comes from Egypt primarily, and this food was a staple in not only their diet, but also their sacred rituals. It was actually like holy sacrament to them. They revered it with a sense of spirituality too. So all these foods have all those to it. Like chocolate, for example, or cacao, this was the most sacred food for all of Central America, all of the Mesoamericans, the Toltecs, the Mixtecs, the Olmecs, Maya, Aztecs, even in Amazonian culture, like South America. It's a huge staple, sacred food. So honey, of course, universal worldwide. Coconut oil. I mean, you know, if you want, I always joke about coconut oil, like if there's one sign of prosperity and abundance in our world, it's this one food right here. The fact that I can even get, what is this, 32 ounces of coconut oil in this form, and I could do whatever I want with it. I could dip my hand in it, I could smudge myself, I could just like lather myself all up and coat myself literally in saturated coconut oil fat and have the most beautification effect ever, right? Or I could just eat it. And I could teach my body, my physiology, I could train my physiology on how to actually lose fat by eating fat. That's what coconut fat actually does, coconut oil. It has certain fats in it that actually train your cell's energy system. We call that like ATP. It trains it on how to get off sugar as the main source of fuel for energy, and actually teaches it how to prolong its energy conservation through using fat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you were to take, if you were to look at by gram, like a calorie, we've all heard this whole calorie thing, right? We've all been programmed with like calories in, calories out, and that whole idea. Basically, a calorie is just a unit of heat energy. I want to say that one more time, because if you're looking to lose weight, you may figure out some interesting things with this. A calorie is just a unit of heat energy. So if you learn to heat your body up at specific times, or to put stuff in your body that causes a heating effect, you will start to burn more calories without having to go hypersympathetic, without having to strike cortisol or adrenaline all the time. Who's aware that pushing your body when your body is not physiologically like, you know, strong and sturdy enough to handle that kind of stress is not really a good idea? You know, like heavy cardio, for example, right? If you have structural issues, definitely not a good idea. But by adding in some of these foods that we're going to talk about, you can do that. And you can lose all the weight you want to lose. You can get back into your natural metabolic balance, your balance, not somebody else's, not that girl in the magazine or whatever that is. That girl is probably hyper-anorexic, not healthy, and photoshopped.
Yeah,
thank you. She knows, Auntie knows. She knows the game, right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
It's getting into your beautification process, just getting into your balance. This hot tea is something called Chuchu Huwasi. So everyone repeat after me. Chuchu Huwasi. Chuchu Huwasi. Okay, has anyone ever heard of Chuchu Huwasi?
Amazonian.
It is. It's originally from Brazil, but it's been used in Amazonian folk herbalism. And basically what this does is there's a number of Amazonian herbs I love, and what they're really useful for example, you have things like cat's claw, or it's sometimes called uno de gato.
Yeah.
And that is something that gets paired up with another herb called Paudiarco. Paudiarco is highly antifungal. So if somebody has candida, some kind of like fungal infection or fungal overgrowth, Paudiarco has been used notoriously as to offset that and to kind of push down that candida overgrowth or that fungal infection, right? Cat's claw is antibacterial. So these things get used together because when you're in a jungle, some of the things you're dealing with is not so much like electromagnetic stress from LA. I always use LA as a reference. Or New York, right? You're dealing with a different kind of stress. You're dealing with bacterial infections. You're dealing with fungal infections, fungi. You're dealing with parasites. So you want things that are anti-parasitic, right? Chuchuhuasi is antiviral, means that it wards off viruses or viral infections. In our world today, it's just good to have that kind of stuff because what it does is it builds up our immune system. It makes our immune system more intelligent. So say a virus of some sort does come our way, it comes into our field, our biofield, our immune system knows how to deflect that. Okay? And then also, if anyone has any kind of digestive issues, something I came across in reference to Chuchuhuasi is that it's been used historically for conditions like diverticulitis or like irritable bowel syndrome, which is when your intestinal tract basically is arrhythmic. You have contractions, expansion, contraction, expansion irregularly. So you might notice like a tightening, expanding in your gastrointestinal system, right? Your tubing that processes food. Something like this is going to be very anti-stress or anti-inflammatory and is going to ease the transmission of food. If you start making teas, there's a tendency for people to boil their tea. I'm not of the opinion that that's actually a good idea because water is, we're talking about the structure of the water. Basically, it's bonded by like hydrogen molecules, and those hydrogen molecules, they carry information, and B, those are the hydration units. That's basically what makes like good water good, or makes like certain foods like levitation. It's my language. Water is heat tolerable. It can stand a lot of heat, but once you start getting it up like 170 degrees, 180, it starts to meet its threshold, and that structure breaks down. And you can see how dark. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
You guys can see that, right?
Yeah.
That's the medicine, all saturated into the water. And again, water is an amazing thing. It's a storage unit for information. I look at nutrition, by the way, as information, right? So that's the language I use. It's a storage, not capacitor, but it has a storage capacity to hold on as much information as it can.
Also a transporter.
It's a transporter. Yeah. We're going to do hemp seeds. So here, the bone building material, the stuff that builds the osseous material in our bones, also our ligaments and our joints. Specifically hemp seed because it has all the phosphorus, it has your magnesium, it has those core elements, your calcium, it's all in there. But one of the other things that hemp seed has that not many other, like as far as seeds and nut go, none that I'm aware of, it has what's called sulfur-bearing amino acids, or proteins. So one of the things about vegetarianism is, over a long duration of time, some people can become like sulfur deficient. They're not getting enough sulfur material that builds your nervous system, that builds your brain's neuronal structure, that builds your joints. I had 2 knee injuries, for example, and one thing that saved me and literally cured my knees, and I say cured because I haven't had knee pain in 5 or 6 years since then, is something called MSM. That's basically an oxidized form of sulfur. It's methylsulfonylmethane. It detoxes the liver, and it also helps kind of build back your cartilage and your ligaments. It builds the elasticity.